From the far reaches of the Milky Way galaxy, it's Retro Nerd Girl with a film review for you. Today, I'll be reviewing the movie Meet the Robinsons, released in 2007. Starring Daniel Hansen, Wesley Singerman, and Angela Bassett. Directed by Stephen J. Anderson. The synopsis is, a young orphan inventor, Lewis, is taken to the future by Will Robinson to help solve the mystery of a stolen time machine. The story is based on a book called A Day with Wilbur Robinson, written and illustrated by William Joyce, about a boy, Lewis, spending the day with his best friend Wilbur and being introduced to his eccentric family. The story is centered around the boys helping Wilbur's grandpa find his missing dentures. This feature is shown briefly in the film, paying homage to the book, but it's completely driven to revolve around the actions of the villain in the story, Mike Yahubian, who was created for the film to add more of a challenge in the story. The book is not set in any specific time, but the film went on and made it in the future, where it features Wilbur's dad as a wacky inventor of future technology, who has invented 2 time machines. The project actually started out as a possible live-action film, and in many ways it should have been intriguing to see this story told in that form. But also, it might have gotten a lot more flack resembling Back to the Future, released in 1985, too much. Now, the screenplay was tackled by 7 writers and became Disney's 47th animated feature. After reading that the main character, Lewis, was an orphan who eventually gets adopted in the screenplay, Stephen J. Anderson especially wanted to direct this film, being an adopted child as well. This plays into the film because the scenes of Lewis dealing with his identity and longing to be with his birth mother are the strongest and most effectual parts of the film. John Lasseter, Chief Creative Officer of Animation at Disney, was shown an early version of the film, to which he suggested many changes to nearly 60% of the movie. The story is good in my opinion, but laden with so many plot holes to do with time travel and some stranger character decisions to create tension between Lewis and Wilbur Robinson. The film pays homage to the book in scenes which are interwoven into the story. The science fair that Wilbur attends is held at Joyce Williams Elementary School as a nod to the author. Now, the pacing. The pacing at 1 hour and 35 minutes is not very good in the beginning. The first 2/3 of the film is pretty average, and some parts are even very confusing. But the last third is nothing short of amazing and redeems the entire film. Now, the challenge. The challenge in this film is overwhelmingly obvious in the most cliched way. It's a skinny, hooked-nosed, twirling mustache villain that we've seen since the silent film era. Mike Yahubian, also referred to as the bowler hat guy, is our villain, and visually, he is a character that kids will not find very scary, and grown-ups might even laugh at for being over the top, melodramatic, and not very smart. One thing I have to say about this bad guy is that in the last third of the film, he becomes more fleshed out as a character with depth, who has lost his way in the world by not letting go of the past. He sought to see everything in the worst light, and is also the thesis of the film's message on moving forward. It's through him that Lewis finally learns his most valuable life lesson. One of the additions to the film after John Lasseter's screening was to add a sidekick for the bad guy. and Doris, the helpful bowler hat, became the one. Doris's name is taken from door 15, which is the item number Robinson Industries has given to her as one of their rejected inventions. And at first you think she's just a helpful robot, but then you realize that she's actually encouraging Bowler Hat Guy to do all of the hard work for her. She's the brains of the operation. And actually her mission is much more sinister, to enslave the human race and take over the planet. She does bring upon this kind of sense of surprise when you find out, ooh, so she's the villain, right? It's just, I don't know, I like villains like that, things that you don't expect. I love the surprise of her reveal as the ultimate villain. She's very reminiscent of the Purse in My Stepmother is an Alien, released in 1988. That helpful sidekick turned main bad guy. I just love it. And it's then that we also realize that the bowler hat guy is actually not as bad as we originally thought. And I love all that in-depth character detail that's put into the story. Now my empathy for the protagonist wanes in and out at times. Louis is an adorable 12-year-old orphan boy with a unique hairstyle and a sweet smile, excited by the inventions that he creates. He doesn't seem to be very interested in being adopted. He's more interested in his inventions, but yet it causes him a lot of pain and suffering that he hasn't been adopted yet. And he's been taking this rejection so very hard, proclaiming that he has no future. As at 12, that's pretty hard to hear, that a 12-year-old boy doesn't think that he has a future. That's pretty intense. So you really feel for him, and you have a lot of emotion to really like him. I mean, this is all really good stuff to build up his character, because he has so much potential for a moral in the film, because he carries with him the burden of failure, much like our villain. He has a bright idea that if he makes an invention that allows him to remember his past, he can remember his mom and see who she is in order to claim an identity. And that's when we meet Wilbur Robinson. He's a sly, fast-talking 13-year-old from the future. And he also claims to be a time cop. And this is what sets him up to be very untrustworthy, because he's making up all these stories instead of being very truthful. Now, the character of Will Robinson is reminiscent to the famous Will Robinson from the 1965 TV show Lost in Space, and the film pays homage to that by having the Robinson home robot say, "Danger, Will Robinson," which is a famous quote from the TV show. Now, when they meet, it's also when Louis becomes really unlikable during the middle of the film. And I think it's pretty obvious that we can sympathize with his desire to see his mother, and knowing now that there's a time travel machine that he can go back in time and see his mother, he becomes obsessed with it and completely ignores all reality and a lot of common sense. For instance, this is a great example. Louis, not knowing anything about time machines, impulsively takes the wheel and crashes it. And he never apologizes for breaking the time machine. And he just continues on and on to make more selfish demands. And it's very frustrating to really watch the interaction between Wilbur and Louis, because it plays into the trope of misunderstandings amongst characters, and that's a trope that I really, really dislike. And they do it over and over and over again until finally the last third of the film. Now, all of this confusion could have been easily avoided if Wilbur, we'll blame Wilbur in this case, would have explained to Louis that Louis is actually the inventor of the time machine. Now, the technical aspects. This movie really has a very bright and beautiful aesthetic when it comes to many of the visuals, many of the scenes, and many of the locations that are filmed. It's beautiful. It's bright too, very bold colors. And then they have this added gritty texture that many of the inanimate objects have, giving this playful animated world a bit of real world charm. And I love that. I love the fact that, you know, you could see rust and you can see small details that are realistic. The visuals of this world, I mean, I guess I was talking about that before, was the visuals of the future world of Todayland is a tribute to Tomorrowland in Disney's theme parks. It's simply gorgeous and dazzling. And I especially love the fact that the people travel through bubbles and tubes. I mean, that seems like fun. Even though it's not practical, it just seems like a lot of fun. And we've seen this before in Barbarella, released in 1966, and the TV show Futurama. Now, I wasn't too excited by some of the character designs. The book actually surpassed the film in that regard. However, there are some exceptional standouts, like the details put into the bowler hat guy's teeth and the strange edging of his hairline on the back of his head. Little things like that. It's just detailed. It really catches your attention. It's definitely admirable work. It's also so strange because even from the poster and the trailer, while watching the film, it doesn't look like a Disney animated film at all. At first I thought the film was produced by one of the lesser known animated studios out there, and I can't put my finger on it exactly, but the design of the characters are a bit more crude than something I would expect from Disney, and perhaps they were really experimenting with something new to appeal to a young audience. So much of it is very simplistic, exaggerated, and sometimes extremely geometric. However, I can say that the animated demonstration of emotional range within each of the characters were outstanding, giving the story real depth and making you feel like you're actually looking at real creatures, real people. They didn't look realistic, but the emotions were. So it was easier to identify with the characters. The film score was pretty amazing, along with some great recordings, such as Little Wonders by Rob Thomas, Another Believer by Rufus Wainwright and Marius DeVries, and The Future Has Arrived, written by Danny Elfman and performed by the All-American Rejects. Now the performances were really great, with a lot of surprise performers. Like, we have Angela Bassett voicing Mildred, the lady who runs Lewis's orphanage, and Tom Selleck playing Cornelius Robinson, which the film throws in a gag by saying the character looks like Tom Selleck, but in actuality he doesn't. Now, Adam West voices Uncle Art so sweetly. It's so nice to hear his voice. And Nicole Sullivan voices Franny. Director Stephen J. Anderson was so involved with the film that he ended up doing 3 voices in the film. He did the bowler hat guy, Grandpa Bud, and Tallulah. Now, the best part of the film. There are so many amazing moments in this film. I enjoyed all of Little Goob's scenes. Goob is actually short for Yagoobian, so it's bowler hat guy when he's a little boy. It's so interesting that he would have been fine, like a normal person, if he hadn't bumped into his future self who gave him some really, really bad advice. Now the ending, I just love the ending. It wraps up sweetly with a wonderful message from Walt Disney himself, urging all creative artists to keep moving forward after their failures. So it really just gets me very teary-eyed every single time. I don't know, it just touches my heart. Now, my wish list. I wish that there were fewer characters in the film. I know that the film wanted to preserve the charm of the book's many zany characters, but with the main focus of the film being the revenge story of the bowler hat guy, it doesn't really work to have so many characters with barely any effect on the outcome of the story. Like this little girl, she has no reason for being in the film except to set up a gag to have the coach attacked by ants. We didn't need it in the film. I wish that there were fewer gags. There's something about a gag that makes you smile but never actually laugh that's cute, and it feels completely out of place, sandwiched between a dramatic beginning and an action-packed ending. So I think the biggest portion of the film that really needed the most help were probably the middle portion of the film. Story started out great, ended great. The middle was a little murky. Now, I wish that the movie also included more insight to what the future world was all about, like more gadget, more creative insights and predictions. Now, my enjoyment. Many people don't even know about this film, and people who know about it know that it's Disney's least popular animated movie. I barely remember the promotion for this movie when it came out, but when I saw the movie, I realized, oh, I do remember seeing a trailer, but it was just so forgettable, to be honest. And here's the reason why. Aesthetically, it's very forgettable because it has a very generic kids movie facade, akin to a made-for-TV series that you'd find on the Disney Channel. It really didn't look like an actual movie. However, what I have to say is that 60% of this film is unique and, dare I say, outstanding. So yeah, I really enjoyed this film. The beginning of this film and the ending is just, for me, mind blown. I think it's a very sweet movie with a very big heart and a wonderfully surprising message for dreamers, inventors, and creators to understand that failure is also so very important because it can and will lead to success only if you keep trying and put your mistakes in the past and learn from them. Just keep moving forward. My rating is a 7.6. Now that sums up my review. I hoped you liked it. This is Retro Nerd Girl signing off. Take care, movie lovers. I'm off to my next review.